What is up, people of the internet? Welcome back to another episode of the Waveform podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Marques.
And I'm Andrew.
And this episode is a bit of a guest interview. In fact, it's the whole the whole interview. It's pretty exciting. We were able to get Hugo Barra to join us in the studio, in the flesh. If you haven't heard the name, or if you don't know if you've heard the name, you might remember Hugo from work at Google or Xiaomi, or most recently, this is why we had him on, he had this huge, super in-depth blog post about Vision Pro and like the state of VR and AR. And obviously he has experience from Oculus and a bunch of history in those companies, but there were a lot of things in those posts that I had never read before, like unique thoughts about VR and AR, which in a world where feels like everyone said everything about this stuff, it was really interesting to see. So I wanted to dig in on some of his hot takes.
Yeah, if you don't know the name, you know probably 10 products that he's worked on. Though, like, he's been in this space for so long and has a ton of great insights and is really, really knowledgeable, just everything tech.
Yeah, so it was really fun to have a true expert in the industry come on and elaborate on some of his takes. So I think we should just jump right into it. Let's roll it. Welcome, Hugo Barra, to Waveform.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
It's really good to have you. We've talked a little bit in the past about this, but we've seen you on stage presenting with Google, with Android stuff. We've seen the Xiaomi stuff, and you've had a long history with VR. And we've talked a lot about Apple Vision Pro on this podcast. But I feel like a lot of your thoughts are things that we hadn't even considered, and a lot of takes from your blog post are angles about the history and the future of VR in general that we somehow haven't gotten to yet, and I would love to talk about them with you.
I'm excited to be here, ready to do it.
Okay, amazing. Well, I feel like the first thing I want to jump into is like Vision Pro as it exists today. Like, it's a pretty good product. You've owned one, you've used one. We've had our review unit, our review came out. What is your 30-second summary you give to people who ask, like, oh, you've used Vision Pro, right? What do you think of it?
To me, the coolest thing about it is that it feels like a product that comes straight out of science fiction. And I think, David, you talked about this previously. You know, it is, I think, easily the most sophisticated piece of consumer technology, sort of certainly that I've touched, and likely of almost anything in the world today. So putting on a Vision Pro feels like you're visiting the future, right? It has that taste of sci-fi-ness that is just a beautiful way to create curiosity, to create optimism around tech and all that stuff. So sci-fi. It
is close to magic for a lot of people, I think, especially people who have never tried other headsets. So that's something with a lot of reviews that I like to look at is context. If you're reviewing this headset, have you tried other headsets? And if so, how many and how far back have you tried the headsets? And we are also briefly talking about like the first Oculus when it came out, how long ago that thing came out and how basic it was. But if you've used headsets since then, this might not have the same magic appeal, but it is fun to give people who have never tried a headset a look in the Vision Pro and just the look on their face.
Can I throw just a completely random story into the mix when talking about the history of VR? So I've been a VR enthusiast for my entire adult life. And for me, it started off when I was a freshman in college. My first internship was, I was a QA engineer at Walt Disney Imagineering. This was in the 90s. In a project that was part of Disney Quest, like the indoor theme park thing that they had going on until a few years ago. And this project was called the Aladdin Magic Carpet. It was a virtual reality attraction. Whoa. And this was the craziest thing ever because of the equipment, the technology that was available at the time. So you'd like sort of sit on a chair. It was kind of like just holding your bum. You put on a seatbelt, and then you'd put on this headset, which was this massive CRT display. It protruded out like 1.5 feet off your face. We can pull a photo and show it.
Yeah.
And it was so heavy, like we talk about 600 grams, etc. It was in the kilograms that it needed steel cables hanging off the ceiling to hold it in place so your head, wouldn't fall. And each eye, it was VGA resolution, so it was actually not bad. Each eye was powered by a separate Silicon Graphics Onyx workstation. And it was incredible. And they actually had what you might call the first motion controller that anyone ever came up with. Now, this launched 25 years ago. So to me, the history of VR, certainly in entertainment, kind of starts back then. So boy, have we come a long way.
We have.
I could probably pull video from that from my family archive because I've gone to that ride so many times.
Really?
I've done.
Do you
that
remember
what
it was like?
I remember it.
Was it mind blowing? I feel like it would be mind blowing to have.
As like a 6-year-old, it was insane.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Adam, how old were you? Did you exist then?
I'm older than I look.
That is really funny. Yeah, I mean, so even if you only go back to what, did you use the first Quest? I mean, the first Oculus.
Yeah, I did.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a decade.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I mean, I was using it as a freshman in college in 2013. So
yeah. So now we're looking at like, okay, we've seen this arc of improvement. Clearly, we've figured out what parts of a VR headset that we want to improve the most to deliver the best experience to people. Lots of resolution, lots of high quality sensors and tracking. And we've arrived in 2024 where we have things like Quest 3, Quest Pro. Those are the most common ones I'm going to reference. And now Apple Vision Pro. I think one of the most interesting things is that while you may or may not consider Vision Pro the best VR headset, you can definitely argue that it's the most important VR headset, especially just because of the way people treat what Apple does.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit on why it's so important, not just for Apple, but for the entire industry as a whole?
Yeah, totally. So first of all, I think that the Vision Pro is one of two seminal events for the VR industry. The other one is probably the founding of Oculus and obviously the subsequent acquisition that gave them so much investment firepower. But I put Vision Pro right up there for a very simple reason, which is like, if Apple cares, then everybody cares, right? Like if a brand that has earned the respect and reputation of consumers all around the world actually cares about this thing enough to put a product in the world with their perspective, then everybody cares.
Yeah.
Palmer Luckey started Oculus, used to say that like VR has to be something that everybody wants before it can become something that everybody can buy or can afford. Which is why, by the way, in that long essay that I wrote, I don't even talk about price because I think it's not really the point of a product at this stage. So to me, it is the fact that Apple has a perspective, and they are applying the Apple attention to detail in a way that no one else, frankly, has the patience to do because it takes years to arrive at all of those little things that they've done. And I think that's really important. There's one thing about the Vision Pro, which I think is probably the most important thing from a product perspective, which is how they introduced gaze and pinch. To me, that is the VR equivalent of the introduction of multi-touch, which is without any doubt, right? Capacitive multi-touch is the defining characteristic of the current generation of smartphones, and 100%. It was introduced in the first iPhone and defined that product more than anything else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you go back and look at those videos of the first iPhone, when he pinches to zoom in the picture and the whole crowd goes, oh, whoa, like that moment, that intuitive moment, that magical understanding everyone had, that click. Yeah. That is interesting. So gaze, you think, is one of them.
I think, it's the combination.
Yeah.
It's looking at a
haptic
thing.
feedback in a way.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that you're giving yourself haptic feedback by touching your other finger.
Right? People laugh when I said that, but that's true.
Yeah.
Like when you're actually touching your finger.
Super high quality.
That's the moment. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah. I think, and also, this is the headset that has a screen on the outside of it. It's got the eyes going through. It's got the transparency where you can see through and people can see your eyes. Do you think that's also a critical part of maybe what makes VR more appealing to people, or is that lower on the totem pole? I
think that's much lower in the totem pole. First of all, I don't know why, but no one's talking about the fact that came straight out of Ready Player One, like where the headsets are all, I think they're all optical pass-through in Ready Player One.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it's almost like eyesight when the person is like super immersed in content, you can't see their eyes,
right.
But then it's like totally. I've gone back and I've rewatched, and like, that's totally where it comes from.
So funny. Okay.
I think that's like, it's like Apple design perspective at play here. It's just like doing something really different and unique that tries to bring sort of human, nature out into this crazy, potentially isolating new type of technology. Mm-hmm. I hope it survives. because I think it's fascinating. Let's forget about the implementation as it's there today. I think it's going to get a lot better if they decide to keep investing on it. I hope it stays, but I worry that it may not, because the quest to reducing weight, pun was not intended, is so much more important.
Do you think that's something that would only happen in the non-pro version? Like, in your opinion, would they keep it in the pro model and still try to get rid of weight in other ways?
There's one circumstance where I think they might, which is if the pro model uses such premium, lightweight materials, carbon, etc., very expensive but lightweight materials, that it allows the bill of weight to sort of still have that lenticular display, which I don't know how much that thing weighs, but it's probably like in the 20 to 30 gram territory, maybe, including the display controller.
But then you still have to have glass on the outside.
Or faux glass, pseudo glass, whatever that thing is. So I think it comes down to like this trade-off space of weight versus features, which I think is so ridiculously important.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on, like, Apple doesn't like to call this a VR headset. They like to call it a spatial computing headset, which the first time I ever used this at our first briefing at WWDC, it sort of clicked for me what that meant, because they had been talking about that over and over and over again, like, it's spatial computing, the era of spatial computing, it's here.
Yeah.
And for the most part, unless you immerse yourself in a full environment, you are mostly in just an AR environment.
That's right.
And so I know that now with the Quest 3 and with the Quest Pro, but mostly with the Quest 3, Meta has been pushing into like, okay, we actually also have to enable these like AR mixed reality environments. But in your opinion, do you think that the mixed reality spatial computing like paradigm is the thing that's going to like push forward? Because I feel like Meta sort of gave up on that a little bit for quite a while and realized people mostly use this for gaming.
Yeah.
And that actually, I think, is a reason why this still feels like a dev kit, because there's nothing to do in it yet, and like they want you to use it for work. But like, do you think that that's a paradigm that's going to move forward, or do you think that Apple is going to realize that maybe the hyper productivity stuff is not it, but there's still merit to spatial computing and they'll pivot?
Yeah. So I think short answer is I think spatial computing is the right bet to place with mixed reality, augmented reality, whatever we want to call it, as sort of this super important defining element of it. I think it just has so much more utility. The Oasis isn't a thing, in my opinion.
Right.
The way Oculus ended up focusing on gaming beyond sort of its founding philosophy, it was a company that was built by gamers, was the fact that we tried other things and they didn't work. So gaming was like, okay, like product market fit exists here. Let's keep investing on tech that would enable something like mixed reality, but let's go all in on gaming first.
Yeah. I think that's what I keep thinking about those, especially the Quest headsets, is they didn't really necessarily have an obvious thing, and gaming kind of surfaced as the thing that people like to do the most, and that's the thing that people started gravitating towards, and it works really well with controllers. And now this has happened with Apple products before, where a first gen comes out and we just kind of wait and see what developers come up with, and it seems like, fitness is catching on, so the watch is now a fitness watch. Is it possible that a new thing will come up as the thing that people want to do in Vision Pro, or does it have to be gaming again? Because there's no controllers with the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
So it feels like gaming is going to be a weakness of the Vision Pro. There's no really immersive VR or AR gaming experiences that I have found to be convincing yet.
Yeah.
So spatial computing feels like it's the other possible big thing, but
yeah.
I don't know, gaming's pretty good on the Quest.
I think gaming is, first of all, it is a piece of anything you want to do, because like if it's a productivity device, you're still going to want to have fun with it.
Always.
I do think that sort of casual gaming, mixed reality gaming is a sort of a fertile enough territory that Apple can kind of go all in on that stuff for a while without sort of giving in to the immersive gaming stuff, which, as you said, I think would require some sort of controller support and so on. I think that's going to be more of a hobbyist thing. And I hope that Apple opens up enough sort of hooks such that the Steam VR hobbyists can still find a way to play, games with immersive VR games with Vision Pro. But I think they're going to go all in on casual games, things that you can certainly do just with your hands, going to social and share play gaming as well with multiple personas in one place. That to me feels like a big enough place that it's worth Apple bet.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's funny because like for years they're always showing ARKit demos at these launches with the new iPad, and
to what end?
Nothing has happened from that.
Exactly.
But it's like every single year they're like, oh, a D&D game is on a table, and oh look, everyone with their iPads can see it. And at the time, obviously, it was like, you're not going to go meet up with your friends in real life with your iPads and do this the whole time you're hanging out. But this makes more sense with like the share play. You're in different environments, you're in different rooms, and that was part of the videos too.
Yeah, that shared experience feels like the obvious next dimension, if you will, of what would make something like this really appealing to people and would want them to use more often. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are like one update away that I think could be really cool about this type of headset. Okay, I want to go through some of your takes in your blog post that I would consider hot takes. And I don't know if you would agree. Obviously, you have a lot of thoughts and you've much more experience than I do, but some of these to me read as like really fascinating that may or may not turn out to be true. So I want to go through some of them with you.
People may or may not disagree with.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Got a lot of emails.
We'll see. Okay. All right. Here's the first one I saw that I read. Apple intentionally made the display blurry to hide the screen door effect. Now, just to clarify what the screen door effect is, because these displays in the Vision Pro are incredible. And the screen door effect is most often noticed in displays that are lacking resolution. So break it down. Why do you think Apple would do something like this, and why would it happen on a display with such high resolution?
So first of all, hugely controversial point. There's a very famous blogger in the VR space called Carl Guttag, who's a display expert. And I've based a lot of my sort of commentary here on some of his sort of objective findings. I've since learned that there's a lot of people that sort of disagree with the approach that he's taken in some of these things, but I still think that his perspective is really useful. So the challenge with VR is that the pixels are too close to your face. So even when they're so close at 3,000 PPI, 3,000 plus PPI, they're still not close enough that you can't see pixels. There's a whole thing around how you measure resolution in VR. You use angular resolution instead of pixels per inch or pixel display
per degree.
Yeah, it's like pixels per degree.
Yeah.
And even as high resolution as the Vision Pro is, it's not approaching what you would consider Retina display for a VR device. They're like maybe 60 to 70% of the way there. So what that means is pixels are still actually discernible. You can see 2 pixels apart, which means that things like screen door effect and aliasing, which are some of these sort of distortions or kind of visual artifacts that make things less smooth to look at, are still mildly present. So my hot take here is that Apple maybe tuned their display to add a tiny bit of blur and lose a bit of perceived resolution just so that these little visual artifacts disappeared and they would get a softer look on the display, which to me is kind of like a matter of taste, right? Which is obviously something that we respect Apple for. So I support that decision if that's how they went, because it does make for something that just feels a bit more pleasant and less harsh than these visible things.
I think that's a good word. Here's the parallel I was going to draw. When I'm shooting a video about a smartphone, I'm pointing an 8K camera and a lens at a screen.
Yep.
And these screens are incredibly high resolution, and you can actually see when I pull focus on the lens, when I hit the exact focus plane of the lens, because there's this harsh, banded, crisp like display. And it's not like you're seeing individual pixels.
Yeah.
But it is harsh. And I found that if I turn it just another fraction of a degree and it's slightly out of focus, it's a little smoother and easier to look at, especially with macros. And so I was thinking about that when reading that. And I was like, okay, I don't know if Apple is, necessarily making their display blurrier, or maybe just tuning the lenses to be slightly beyond the plane of focus of the display or whatever they're doing. But as a taste decision, I feel like I also support it because overall, you don't want eye fatigue. And as much as I want to see all the pixels, I'm a pixel snob. I like it to be a little more pleasing to look at. So I get it. I feel like I get it.
Yeah.
So that is, I agree with the take. I like that one. All right, we're going to take a quick break for ads. We'll be right back to talk about how maybe Apple Vision Pro is the best thing to happen to the Quest. See you soon. Support for this episode of Waveform comes from Shopify. So selling things used to be a huge hassle. You'd have to load all your spices or jewelry or whatever onto a horse-drawn wagon and take a dangerous journey that would take weeks. Now we can sell things on the internet and the entire process takes like 15 minutes. And so you don't even have to leave your house. It's all thanks to platforms like Shopify. So Shopify is the global commerce platform that's flexible enough to help your business sell at every stage of growth, whether that means getting your new soda brand off the ground or racing to increase production of your stuffed crocodile dolls due to international demand. No matter what you're making, Shopify can help you sell it everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person point-of-sale system, Shopify offers the flexibility to support your operation. And right now, it's easier to stress less and sell more with Shopify Magic, an AI-powered helper created to give you a little boost. So you can try it for yourself and see why companies like some of our favorites, Ridge and Adams, have used the platform to power their growth. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/waveform. Go to shopify.com/waveform now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/waveform. Support for this show comes from Netsuite, and that's exactly what Netsuite provides, support. But what they really provide is support where you need it, because no one needs help where they don't need it. So Netsuite wants to provide you with products and services that are tailor-made for your business. Help where you need it. Netsuite is a top-rated cloud financial system bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required, accessible from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all of your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies have already made the move, so do the math, see how you'll profit with NetSuite. By popular demand, NetSuite has extended their one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks, so head to netsuite.com/waveform. That's netsuite.com/waveform, netsuite.com/waveform. Well, we kind of already went over this, but I'll sort of phrase it in the way that you did, which is Apple Vision Pro is the best thing that ever happened to VR, including for Meta, who has made their own headsets.
So this is probably like the highest confidence sort of take that I have, having been in sort of the middle of the thing when I used to work at Oculus at Meta. Mm-hmm. Side note is I used to joke, or semi-joke, I would say, in like company all hands and stuff, that like the best thing that could happen to us was if Apple decided to enter, VR. And, there've been rumors about this for a long time. Because I really do think that, as I said, when Apple cares, everybody cares was going to be a thing that would help us tremendously, like massively floats all boats, massively grows the pie. And it was interesting to even see Mark Zuckerberg's video recently where he kind of talks about the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously he cares about what's happening, so why not talk about it, which I give him huge props for. And it's just so interesting, putting aside whether you agree or disagree with things he said. I mostly agree. But putting that aside for a second, it's so interesting to see how Meta, in the voice of Mark in this case, has now shifted from evangelizing to competing, right? So before it was like, hey, VR is cool. Like, you got to try this. Please try it. Like, go try it. Here's some cool things that you can do with it. To like, no longer. Consumers don't need to be convinced that VR is cool. They now know that VR is cool.
Yeah.
So now it's like, why do we have a better product? And I love that because now it's all focus is on the teams that build the product and how to make it better, and chasing your competitor, whether they're in front of you or in your rear view mirror. It's kind of like Android versus iOS all over again.
That's the comparison I think a lot of people would make. And obviously it's Apple, so it makes sense that this is the iPhone of it, but the competitor to the iPhone often needs to come up with the reason why you would choose it over the iPhone, especially in this country. That's just a very popular thing you have to do.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's price, sometimes it's a couple features that this one doesn't have, sometimes it's some customization that this one doesn't have. And there are a lot of really good reasons why people would buy a Quest 3 over a Vision Pro, despite being a seventh of the price or whatever it is. So I think that's a comparison a lot of people will make.
On that note, where you say, like, now that we have competitors, it legitimizes everything. The interesting thing that I've noticed about this that you actually said in your blog was that this is one of the first Apple products that didn't really meet the build it and they will come mindset for developers, which I also find weird, right? Because Apple announced it 8 months before it came out, something like that. And they were like, we've got these dev kits available. You can build these apps. And it seemed like you would have developers rushing to make Apple Vision Pro versions of apps, right?
Exactly.
When it launched, there were like 600 that were native. Everything else was iPad, which cool, you can natively port over stuff. But why do you think developers have not garnered so much interest in making native Vision Pro apps? Like, it seems worth it to do now so that when the second generation's out, you already have something you can build on. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I totally agree with everything you said. And I think that it's likely that Apple just really underestimated the sort of the Apple magic influence over developers by thinking that more things would show up. Of those 600, frankly, Apple probably had to even lower its bar for approval in the App Store because there's a lot of like random clocks,
stock tickers,
and timers and things.
Widgets you can put on walls.
A collection of widgets makes sense, but the widgets as like maybe individual apps are just not as interesting. So I think they did underestimate or overestimate their power over developers, and didn't actively do what they possibly could to get some of these key apps in the store, to like really, even if they had to pay developers or give them all sorts of incentives, I think they probably should have done that.
They thought the incentive would just be we're Apple,
right? So, and I'll mention my favorite example of where Apple missed a beautiful opportunity. Have you guys tried Piano Vision on Quest 3?
I think
I've seen
Ellis
has.
Yes.
Yeah. Ellis is a piano player as well.
Ellis, what do you think of that app?
It's one of those things that like, wow, this would be so cool.
It's a really good way of phrasing it.
And like, there's like a Piano Vision like clone in the Vision Pro store, which is like really not that good. It's called Piano Frames, I think. But Piano Vision is like a legitimate tool for learning how to play piano. I learned piano as a child and I forgot it all, and I sort of went back to learning it with that app. And it's just like I can't think of a better example of an augmented reality app. But that one. So why isn't it available on Vision Pro?
Right. It's so weird. It just maybe it's because the price is expensive and developers don't know, but my sort of take on that was that I just felt like developers didn't know what to do yet. And I think that that's why you're seeing so much kind of shovelware apps is because people don't understand yet what the paradigm of spatial computing is versus just something in virtual reality.
We at Oculus, we had to chase developers a lot. Like, we sat down with them, we helped make the app better. We put a lot of budget to work towards, funding these developments. And I think maybe Apple could have done a bit more of that. Maybe there's still time to do it.
Yeah, when we talked to Apple about this, maybe they're not talking to us about it, but they talk so much about the development of the hardware, how amazing the hardware is, how long they've spent inventing new technologies and building new things, materials inside this to make it physically possible. We had to invent this to make it fit in this so we could do this. I'm like, that's all amazing. But people have to use it now. And there are things that they're going to want to actually do in the headset that are kind of like lacking at the moment. Like, there's a couple big apps, Netflix, YouTube, things that just aren't here that I think if they were, that I could more easily answer the question, what does it do? Because that would have a couple more things to say that, oh, you already know about Netflix. You know what this does. And it's just right there, just right on the doorstep of like being easy to explain. Here's another one of your hot takes. I'll read to you. The battery, this thing right here, the battery hanging off the Vision Pro, I thought it was, a compromise for weight and heat, but you're saying it's actually an intentional decision and that they will keep it this way for the foreseeable future to tether other things and get you used to the idea of tethering to the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Please explain.
And this is a super controversial one. I do really, really think that it's one of the most important things that Apple did. It's like number 2 in my list of thank you, Apple things. The first one is Gaze and Pinch and introducing the world to that. It's just a gift to humanity. This one is not quite a gift to humanity, but it sets the right tone for VR. Taking the battery off is the first step in the journey of reducing the weight by pulling components, but also pulling heat generation out of the headset. Just to give you an idea, I don't know how much this thing weighs. Obviously, there's a lot there besides the battery, but the Quest 3 battery is 69 grams.
Nice.
Right, which is like, what, 15% maybe of its weight?
69 grams. Yeah, it's about, 500 grams. Yeah.
Something like that,
sure.
Right? But when you start to take off 70 grams for the battery and you take out a whole PCB, and now all of a sudden you can take out the fan because you don't have heat on that thing anymore. And like you start to find a path to that magical 300 grams, which I think is where things really turn. And people stop saying that this headset is too heavy to wear, but also it starts making their face, hot. And Ellis, I hear you totally on that. Totally hear you on that. So the only way to do that is to set expectation with V1 that there's a tethered brick off this thing, all the way to inventing a belt clip and sell it in your store, despite the ridicule that may seem. I think that's all worth it.
So, okay, the foreseeable future of Vision Pro then is battery is always tethered, but also getting people used to that idea also allows them to, in the future, possibly take more pieces of Vision Pro out of the headset and tether them as well, so that you get this lighter and lighter face computer.
Yep.
It's a good idea.
And not only moving things to this brick, but at some point, you may not need the brick anymore because you can just plug it into your MacBook or your iPad or even your iPhone.
Sure. Definitely. Well, I guess the magic right now is that you just look at your Mac and it appears, and that's super cool. But if you get, let's say, because we expect there to be a non-Pro of this headset at some point. An Apple Vision Pro is $3,500, an Apple Vision Air or whatever
15
is somewhere down the road, which has a certain different feature set that enables it to be cheaper.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't do the wireless stuff as well, but you can plug it right into your Mac, and they still have the tether, and everyone's used to the tether.
I think getting that headset to $1,500 without getting rid of the compute is going to be a really tall challenge.
What do you think is, okay, if you were to start now chopping things out of Vision Pro to get to the magical $1,500 headset, what do you get rid of right off the bat? I feel like you have to get rid of the eyesight. With today's tech.
Yeah, I think eyesight, I don't know how much that weighs, but it is a bit of dead weight. You might argue. I think their depth camera, not the LiDAR, but the other camera.
True depth
camera, which I think they only use for the persona enrollment. It might be another thing you can get rid of.
Use your iPhone to enroll.
Just chop that off altogether.
Yeah.
I think they can probably use 4 or 5 tracking cameras instead of 6. You have to think about your mouth because that's almost exclusively why I have the cameras facing down. Anyway. But then I think, so then the next thing I would move out is the M2 chip and that whole thing.
Yeah.
The last thing to go would probably be the R1 chip and everything around it because that's when you really are.
It needs to be there.
It needs to be there because it's a sensor.
Right. I wanted to drill down into that a little bit further into the plugging in paradigm because Apple specifically, it seems like they want this to feel like it's a computer. Don't need your MacBook anymore. You don't need it, it's a whole thing. It has an M2 chip in it. It's just as powerful as a MacBook Air.
Yeah.
So it's a weird paradigm, right? Because they're basically selling it as a whole separate computer, but they're also selling it as a headset, which we don't traditionally see as a computer.
Yeah.
I know that Oculus, they have a standalone chip inside of it too, but you're not like running a browser on that generally. But Apple has Safari in there. They've got iMessage in there and all of these different apps. Do you see a point in time where I know that you said that they were going to like remove it and switch to plug. could they feasibly do that, and have like a cheaper one that doesn't have its own computer and is powered by a separate computer?
You could sell this as an accessory, right? This is essentially an iPad Pro in a box, probably with some additional co-processing capability. Maybe not even, because if you want to make it pluggable into an iPad, you then have to move that into the iPad anyway, right? So this is like, you could literally sell the compute as
computer
an
brick.
Option, right? That turns your headset into a fully, enclosed spatial computer that gives you the equivalent of an iPad Pro in terms of compute capabilities and power and so on and so forth. And I think that's a very viable computer to have with you.
It's like Mac Mini in a way.
And we're very close to it.
Doesn't have a screen.
We're very close to this being a spatial iPad Pro that's very usable and suitable for a lot of different tasks. Forget the price, right? But as far as job to do, I think we're very close. We're maybe 2 software updates away, plus filling in the App Store gap from being there, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Could we get rid of the speakers and have consumers be happy?
You have to use AirPods.
You have to use something else, but that just feels like in 99% of other electronic times we're using devices, we're using not the speakers on the device. But it seems like VR headsets, I don't know a lot of people that feel that way, that wear specifically headphones when they're doing VR.
Yeah, I think you probably don't need to, because I don't think it necessarily buys you that much in terms of weight reduction and cost reduction. And I think it does take away from that sort of magical put it on and you're good to go kind of thing. So that probably would rank a lot lower in my priority list.
Yeah. Oh, I have like very existential questions that are like future out. I don't know if you want to jump into those right off the bat.
I could pitch one if you want.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so I remember when I was reporting on Oculus stuff way back in the day, and they, I think, acquired, what company did they acquire? It was some VR 360 storytelling company, and they basically made a couple of movies that you could watch in VR, and it was like immersive because it would be all around you, and you had to do all this stuff. Where do you see do things like that actually pull users in and make it a paradigm that people want to use? Because I always thought when I was reporting on that, I was like, it's a cool little experience, but just like this launched with the Alicia Keys experience, and I'm sure that they'll launch, and it's amazing, right? It's amazing, but it's sort of like a demo of what the headset is good for in general.
Yeah.
Do you think that Apple investing in more of those kind of experiences is something that would actually get people to buy the headset? Because with the Oculus thing, it was a cool couple of movies, but it didn't feel like someone was going to buy an Oculus to watch these movies because not that many of them are going to be produced.
Yeah. And then, how many times they're going to want to watch that same movie again.
Right.
So you almost need like an infinite.
That was part of the appeal, but it was also something that would get old kind of fast.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've watched the Alicia Keys video like 12 times now.
Really?
It's great. No. But yeah, it reminds me of the 3D phase. We did the whole 3D thing for a while, or even when the red hydrogen came out, and it was like, look at this amazing video on the red hydrogen, and it would look pretty cool, and then you'd be done, and you'd be like, okay, what else?
It's a tech demo.
That's it. Yeah, it's over.
It's a party trick.
Yeah.
I think that's something Mark Zuckerberg talked a lot about, which is they have invested so much in not just games, but also content library and just partnerships in general for things for people to do in Quest.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of why Quest is pretty good.
But to me, that still feels like a way for trying to get people to stick around, but not necessarily the reason people show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, boy, do I have a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
So first of all, and this is a bit of a hot take, I don't think, this is not exactly what you asked, but it's background.
Okay.
I don't
I
think
like
that rectilinear video watching in VR is a thing that retains. We've tested it extensively, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
But over time, you're like, I know, I'm just going to watch it on the TV or on my phone or on my iPad and so on. So, rectilinear video, which is rectangular, whether it's 3D or not, I don't think is a major appeal. You don't create a device as sophisticated as this just for people to watch TV in it.
Right.
So then you go into the immersive video format, which is what you're talking about.
Yes, which is incredible, but it's also like, is this the reason to buy the device?
Yeah. So there's three things that I can think of, all of which my guess is that Apple will experiment with. The first one is storytelling, and it's TV shows, right? Because the magic with TV shows is that if you're into it, there's like seasons and seasons and seasons that you can keep making, kind of exploring the same characters and so on and so forth. I think dramatic storytelling in immersive format is going to be difficult to do, and you talk about this in one of the Waveform podcasts early on about sort of how storytelling in 360 was so much harder, and I agree with all of that. So yes, they'll experiment, but I just don't see it being that good from a cinema and artistic perspective. The two things that I am excited about, one is music, which I think proven by the Alicia Keys sort of intimate studio concert, and I think there's a lot to do there. And the other one is sports, and especially live sports.
I need that. I need that. That's the number one thing I cannot wait to actually get to use in this thing.
And so many people have told me I'm wrong on this, and time will tell. But I could not be more convinced that the biggest thing that VR will change, or I should say, the big thing that VR will change first, is not gaming, it's not productivity, it's spectator sports. And I was personally involved in shooting that Oculus Go, Adam Levine, Jonah Hill, courtside at the NBA, ad from a long time ago. Of course, we couldn't deliver on that product experience. That's a different thing. But it really, really, really transforms the experience of watching sports. And it's so complicated technically and artistically. Technically, because you have to figure out a way to do 8K live broadcast, which is super complicated. You guys know a lot more about this than I do. And artistically, because each sport is different, where do you put the camera? Where do you put the big screen? When do you change angles? How do you do replays? And so on and so forth. But I'm so convinced. Just look at how much money people spend to go to a game.
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
There
are infinite ways that I've thought of that I would like to participate in live sports in the Vision Pro. The one that came to mind, because there was that demo reel where I think there's a basketball game, and then there was a soccer one where you were above the net. That's not even a real seat you can buy. That's better than any seat you can buy, but you're above the net and you can see the play developing in front of you, and it's that there are people with disposable income spending $3,000 on a headset that would love to spend an extra $100 to watch that game live from the best seat in the house. That's a real obvious opportunity. The other one that comes to mind is basketball, where if you're at a courtside seat, which is very expensive, you don't actually get the best view, but it is super cool because you get to see the size of the players and the coaches right in front of you and the ref runs past you and all this fun stuff. Yeah. And I don't know how technically difficult it actually is to execute on, but I wish that there was a little rig right next to the scorer's table that would let me sit there and look around as if I was sitting in that seat. But it's not a real thing yet, and I just keep waiting for someone to pull it off.
Well, Apple bought that company.
Yeah.
It was a company called NextVR in 2020. These guys are absolute geniuses. They've been doing this for a decade. So they know the ins and outs of shooting in 180 3D, including that dual 8K crazy format that they've just launched. But also, they've really invested into thinking about the broadcast pipeline because they want to get to live sports. And it's not even that hard to do something simple that already works. Even the center court seat, basketball, NBA, center court, courtside seat with a big ass projected TV just on top that shows the regular broadcast.
Exactly.
Man, that's good enough for a lot of people. You don't have to go much further.
Yeah.
And then you go all the way to the Formula One craziness. You guys talked about that in the pod as well. I mean, that just is a different world that requires a lot more production. So I think it's coming. I am convinced that when Apple was negotiating its MLS rights and they got the full package, they got it all. Yeah. They were already thinking about this, and people have been seeing cameras courtside in MLS games for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a film coming. The question is, how long until we can watch an MLS match live in immersive?
Right. That will make this purchase worth it for me. Just that.
I think Apple could sell millions of headsets if they can nail live sports.
I guess the benefit of that is that there's sports happening all the time. So it's not like you have to wait for Apple to develop a new movie with the storytelling and the shooting and the production. It's just repetitive. Yeah. I remember back when the HTC Vive was out and it was pretty new, Valve released, I don't know if you're privy to like Dota 2, the video game. Yeah, okay. So I played Dota for like 12 years. And
Data, you like Dota? What?
That's and Valve, because they worked so tightly with HTC early on, because Steam VR and all that stuff, they've always been into VR. They released like a special Dota 3D mode that you could spectate in, where you could look at the map from above and kind of tilt the map around while the live pro match was happening.
Amazing.
And you could like zoom in on the players moving around and stuff. And I thought it was super cool, but it didn't feel like a better way to watch the live game. Like, it again sort of felt like that like tech demo party trick thing for me, where I liked watching one game in it, and then after that I was like, I would rather watch this the regular way. And this is not a real sport. It's an esport. Very different from like people jumping in front of you. But I wonder, like, it just makes me wonder whether or not that has that much appeal. But then you guys say that it does, so I guess I should just believe you. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that if you could have a better watching experience every single week, people would probably buy these, even if they could just only use it to watch the live sport once a week.
I think the Vision Pro and any high quality VR heads can be a single purpose device for a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. Live sports is one thing, teleportation is another thing.
Yeah.
An external monitor is another thing. It just has to get good enough, right, for those things to be viable.
All right, we're going to take one more quick break, but when we come back, a lot more on how Apple's been marketing and packaging Vision Pro. Support for this episode of Waveform comes from Gigabyte. There's a lot of talk out there about how AI is revolutionizing our world. Computers are writing newsletters, robotic bees are pollinating flowers, and a whole new wave of driverless taxis are popping up in cities all over the world. But how can AI power our passions and what we do for fun? That's where Gigabyte's AI gaming laptops come in. So their range of powerful and portable new laptops deliver cutting-edge performance for anyone looking to explore the brave new world of AI-powered gaming. So every 2024 Aorus machine comes equipped with the Gigabyte AI Nexus, which is like a central hub located with all the AI-powered features you could hope for. So that includes super useful tools like AI Power Gear, which automatically throttles and extends your computer's battery life depending on your power source and usage. You'll also get access to AI Boost, which optimizes performance based on what you're doing in that moment, whether you're ripping through an FPS or running your own large language model. AI Boost automatically adjusts the GPU and processors to maximize responsiveness and deliver unparalleled efficiency. Lastly, AI Generator includes various generative AI apps for quick startup, and all 2024 Gigabyte models seamlessly integrate with tools like OpenAI and Microsoft's Copilot AI chatbot. But the Aorus 16X and the Gigabyte G6X take it to the next level with a dedicated Copilot key, allowing users to swiftly tap into productivity and generative AI capabilities. I also keep hearing AI is going to change a lot in the gaming world. Andrew, can you think of anything about that?
Not just optimization, like you said, but like more personal optimization I could see happening, where like maybe you're playing a competitive game like Valorant and you want higher FPS and lower resolution, like you're okay, versus like The Witcher, where you might want 4K crispy resolution and like a lower frame rate. I think finding that between your computer specs and what you want might help out a lot.
Nice. So all of the models that I've been talking about are available right now at aorus.com/laptops/gigabyte-AI. So that's aorus.com/laptops/gigabyte-AI. Gigabyte, team up, fight on.
And Apple they kind of twisted their marketing for the Vision Pro to be more focused around media consumption more recently, right? Because they kind of realized that the workspace thing wasn't really built out yet and the apps weren't coming.
Yep.
So a lot of their verbiage, you wrote about that in your blog post. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I call their marketing like 60-40, 60 initially at least, 60% productivity, 40% video. And I think that may have flipped if you look at some of the latest assets that they've put out and so on. And you're totally right. I think that Apple pulled a product marketing rabbit out of their hole, out of their hat, knowing how little they had for this launch. They were already committed to it, right? developers didn't come. So what do? So you go all in on something that is magical and that demos really well, which is video watching, like watching 60 FPS Avatar in 3D. It's 60 FPS, I think, right?
I think it's like some weird...
switches between 48 and 60.
And 96.
Something
96.
Difference, it's literally not the same frame rate throughout the movie. It switches frame rate.
It switches frame rate.
On the scene.
I wonder what it's like if it's also like that. I mean, it must be, right?
It probably is. It's dynamic. It was a headache to watch in the theater, I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I think I could sense something, but my eye was nowhere near as well trained as yours to like notice, oh, that's a frame rate change.
The cuts, yeah, when they would switch to like running scenes where it was moving fast, it would switch to 60 FPS and it felt like a video game cutscene.
I think it was 24 to 48, by the way.
24 to 48? Yeah. Okay, which is what The Hobbit was filmed in for the entire movie, and the entire movie looked like a video game cutscene.
So they put high frame rate videos in Apple TV Plus, and did all the things that they could to make this as appealing as it could be. I just don't think it's going to sustain the product for very long.
Yeah.
Here's another context question with Apple Vision Pro. What is the ideal weight to actually feel like you've successfully made something that people can wear for a long time? Because this is a notoriously heavy headset. It's aluminum, it has some plastic and glass. It's around 600 grams, right? We've seen lighter headsets. A lot of people reference the Quest 3. The Quest 3 happens to be around about 500 grams. But if you could keep going down, is there like a magical weight that you hit where you just feel like you can wear it forever like sunglasses? And if so, is that anywhere because I think about like what tech is actually possible with what we have now. Is that actually possible with the tech we have to make a light enough headset that's still good but also light?
I think it is if you can work really hard on your sensors, if you can move the compute and the battery off the headset, work for a couple of generations, I think you can break the 350 gram kind of territory, which, can I show my toy?
I would love, please.
Which, funny enough, is where Oculus started. This is an original Oculus DK1 from 2016, I believe. And this is just a display. It's nothing else.
Right.
And it's 380 grams. You put this thing on, and it's a little bit strange. The foam is not exactly super comfortable and so on. But you feel, okay, like this is a qualitative difference from wearing any of the headsets that exist today. So I think 350 grams is kind of where it starts to look really interesting.
That's like about a smartphone weight, I think. Wait, how many? Let me Google that. iPhone 15 Pro Max weight. About 260, right?
Yeah, I think
220.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like it's
so 1.5 smartphones.
Yeah.
Now this is even lighter.
This is the Matrix.
What are you wearing now?
And this is what some people call the Ready Player One headset. This is called the Big Screen Beyond. And to be clear, I have no affiliation with the company or anything. I just think they're badasses. This is 127 grams.
Wow.
And which is lighter than most ski goggles or many ski goggles.
Yeah. It's half a iPhone 15 Pro Max.
Yeah, that's lighter than most phones.
Yeah.
So that's just a screen and that's it.
No,
this is just a screen with a custom facial interface that's made for my face, and it's not like one of 28 that was chosen for me. It's actually custom printed for my face. And this is just a screen with it's a micro OLED display like in the Vision Pro with a pancake lens like in the Vision Pro. It's a tethered headset, to be clear. It has no sensors, no pass-through. So obviously it's a very different subclass of VR product. But what I like about this product and the fact that it exists is that it kind of shows us what sort of this desirable end state is. Like, where do we think that this thing could ultimately go when all of the technologies that need to be invented are finally there?
Yeah.
And this would be a beautiful future.
Yeah, I made a video kind of talking about this collision course that we're on, and it may not be a collision, but on one side there's VR headsets with a ton of technology in them that weigh 500 grams, and we're trying to make them smaller and smaller and lighter every year. But on the other side is smart glasses, and it's something you can wear today and look normal, but you can't fit much tech in them, so they're trying to fit more and more and more tech, cameras, sensors, compute, while keeping them the size of smart glasses. And they're kind of just doing this. They're going at each other. This feels right about in the middle. I don't know if you have a thought about which one might end up winning people over faster or which one could win. I tend to feel like smart glasses are more approachable to more people. They're also less tech, so they're more affordable.
Yep.
But what are your thoughts on that?
I think there is a theoretical form factor right in the middle there, which is the ski goggles optical pass-through theoretical product. It's actually what a lot of the Ready Player One headsets look like. Because you can see the person's eyes and their optical pass-through, they're transparent displays. That to me would be one of the most revolutionary form factors. It's very unclear if one can build a wide FOV, transparent display that would be sort of all the good things that we need.
That was a pun. I don't know if was that on purpose. It was very unclear. That was good.
These
was great pun.
They just come up.
Yeah.
So that to me, and that would be like a 200 to 300 gram device ideally. Okay. That's a beautiful thing. I think the optical pass through, glasses form factor where there's an actual display that's more than just a notification screen. I worry that product may never exist. Because it's just phenomenally difficult to build, an actual display into such a small form factor where everything is so close to your eye and so on and so forth. Yeah. So there's prototypes of that out there. I've seen some of them. Will that product exist, in the next 10 to 15 years? I'm not sure if it will.
Yeah, that feels like one of those sci-fi things that is hard to imagine with what we know about technology today.
Yeah.
Even though it seems really cool.
As quickly as the headset and glasses things are like approaching each other, it still feels like they're on their own track, because especially with what Meta's doing with its AI assistants that you can have in your Meta Ray-Bans now, it's more about contextual awareness of your everyday life and not necessarily manipulating your everyday life.
Yep.
Whereas this is more focused on manipulating your everyday life, but obviously it's a giant headset. And so I'm sure that there's some sort of like in between that, because they want to get those smaller, Meta wants to get those more powerful. But like you said, the technology required, just weight wise, you can't have a pair of Ray-Bans that have an M2 chip inside.
Yeah.
So I have a question around the sort of like developers build it and they will come mindset, because that didn't happen in the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
But it especially is not happening now, I feel, because when there was hype around the Vision Pro when it first came out, we saw a lot of developers that were making Vision Pro apps as soon as they got their Vision Pro, because they needed to understand the paradigm of how spatial computing worked better. But now it feels like it's been out for a while. People aren't talking about it every week anymore. And there was already way less developer hype than Apple assumed there would be. Now, how does Apple get people more excited about this device? And do you think that people are still going to be working on like stuff for it, or is it going to take until a generation 2 to reignite developers to actually think maybe this is worth building for?
Yeah, I think creating organic excitement is going to be very tough, because as you said, right, a lot of that wave of excitement, of curiosity, of interest in the product from consumers is starting to go away. So I believe Apple will just have to use money. They'll have to fund some of these startups, some of these game developer studios, and others, plus, do ambitious partnerships, which require like executive level, conversations and so on to really bring some of these new things to life. It's not an unknown playbook in developer relations. It's just one that I don't think Apple uses that often, because they have such incredible market power.
Yeah.
But I think it's a rounding error to zero in sort of.
You're gonna have to open the old wallet.
And then they got to get Final Cut Pro in 3D.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like, that just needs to exist.
I'm tired of mirroring from my Mac and having one monitor. I need spatial Final Cut.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Tim, you could make it happen tomorrow if you wanted to. No, I also think it's also part of it is Apple could have gone 2 different directions with like attracting people to this VR idea. One of them was super, super high-end, amazing tech. The other, which is a little bit less Apple-like, is super, super accessible, available, cheaper. And I think they typically go with this before they go with that. So ideally, drum up excitement. People get to experience this, which that's what they're doing. You can go to an Apple store today and experience the fun thing. But someday when there's a Apple Vision Pro SE, whatever, that's going to be another exciting moment for, okay, the developers have gotten the thing to the form factor, and now it'll start to be available for the masses. But that's TBD. We'll have to see.
Yeah, there was something really fun that I found very interesting in your blog post, kind of piggybacking off that, about how Apple like over-engineered this thing on purpose. Can you like expand on that idea a little bit?
Yeah, so I think we all know that Vision Pro has just been under development for years and years at Apple, and I'm sure they've gone through like hundreds of prototypes and so on. And a lot of these technologies that sort of became good enough to ship like a couple of years ago, right? And the way that Apple does their kind of pipeline for a launched product is like you have to start, de-risking it and making it like production ready, sometimes years in advance. So I think what happened is it's like a train, right? It's like, so they just onboarded a bunch of these technologies, a few years ago onto a train, continued to work on them. And today there's ways to do less sensors, lighter sensors, and so on. But like that stuff isn't ready to go internally at Apple, at least at the level of quality and integration that they need. So they just got to ship the stuff that's been on the shelf for a while. So I think that's one component, right? It's just like it's technology that was built a couple of years ago that leads to like higher weight and so on and so forth. The other thing is like this being the first time they were launching this product into the world, they have to make it almost like unbreakable, right? Like they have to make it extra everything so that no matter what developers throw at it, no matter what reviewers throw at it, no matter what users throw at it, it will sustain. So I really think that that's part of what they're doing is like overdoing a little bit, overplaying a little bit, just so that they are in a kind of a safe position before starting to take some risks. That could be a lot of crack gate type things if they didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, there's always people will find gates no matter what. They have a habit of doing that. I have maybe an existential question to finish this, which is, okay, we want to make this the most incredible piece of technology of all time, super immersive, best field of view, highest resolution. Let's fast forward a little bit. Let's get 10 years down the line with the highest end, best possible VR headset. If people are able to successfully deliver retina resolution, and as a bonus, let's throw in other senses too. It's got incredible speakers, and it can make you feel heat or cold and the wind in your hair. Let's say you can give people all of the senses through a VR headset.
Yeah.
And you go out to this virtually reconstructed Grand Canyon in the headset, and you look at it, and you really think you're looking at the Grand Canyon. Like all of your senses are fully tricked. You hear the birds chirping. You feel the wind in your hair, and you feel the heat on the top of your head through the headset. And you know it's through the headset, but it is a perfect reconstruction. Do you still feel, and there's no right answer to this, but do you still feel like you have to go see the real thing, or do you feel like you've seen it?
Are you in the Oasis at that point?
Basically. I think the moral of the story is watch Ready Player One, because that's kind of how it feels sometimes. But I wonder what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think that it's like mostly great that people will be able to get to places that they otherwise maybe couldn't afford to go, or can travel all that far, take the vacation to go to, and so on. But I think there's just a little bit of like, okay, that's like a philosophical challenge for humanity. It is kind of the Oasis at its fullest state. But I think it's mostly great, and you're still not going to be able to like hug in VR.
You never know. I felt haptic gloves are pretty good. No, they're just kidding. They were terrible.
And yeah, I think at the end state of this is teleportation. You and Cleo talked about that in that video that she put out a few weeks ago. I think that's the greatest contribution to humanity of this new computing paradigm, is just being able to just be with other people in their house, or in your house, or in some other place. It's going to take a while to get there.
I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you. How fast can you type the alphabet?
Oh, man. It's been such a long time since I think I measured that last. I may have to try it again.
Well, boy, do we have the test for you. This is a bit of a tradition around here where we have our guests type the alphabet A through Z as fast as we can. You can be as competitive or non-competitive as you like, but we will offer you
we have
a chiclet-style keyboard.
3 different keyboard types. You can either use the keyboard built in. There's a mechanical keyboard, or there's like a Apple Magic keyboard.
Yeah.
Whatever you're best at.
I think I'm going to go Apple Magic.
Apple Magic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
Do you spend a lot of time typing on like Apple keyboards, like chiclet little style keyboards like that?
I have that exact same Magic keyboard.
Okay. Oh, that's perfect.
That's a good idea.
Home field.
And I also have a DigiKey, thanks to Andrew convincing me that mechanical keyboards are better.
He's gotten into all of our heads at some point and definitely got us the bug.
I just bought a mechanical keyboard because of Andrew.
I went backwards. I used to be into mechanical keyboards, and now I'm like, give me the Magic keyboard.
Is this screen
less
recording?
travel?
It's already screen recording. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. Well, it's pretty simple. All you got to do is hit the letter A, and then hit the letter B, and then hit the letter C, and then when you hit Z, don't hit enter. Just that's it.
Yeah.
And if I made a mistake?
If you make a mistake, it will not continue until you hit the appropriate letter. So you don't have to backspace. You just have to hit every letter in order.
So you have to watch the screen while you're typing to make sure you...
Okay, do I get one practice run?
We'll give you 3 total runs.
Okay.
Most people tend to improve as they go, No pressure.
Okay, I'm glad we're not recording. All right, here we go. There's one challenge here, which is... Forget about it. I'm going to do it again. 5 seconds. 5.5 seconds. I think that's pretty good.
Oh, that's already pretty good.
5.5.
Yeah. It's better than you think.
All right.
That's pretty good.
We have a little leaderboard.
$5.7.
Nice.
Dang.
Uno más. One more.
All right.
I feel like you're pretty high on the leaderboard, actually.
Adam, do you have the leaderboard available?
He does.
I have it pulled up.
4.83.
Whoa.
4.83.
Whoa. Dropping tenths of a second off of that time. Okay.
Wow. So 4.83 puts you right after Marques.
Oh.
And ahead of Josh Wardle. So you are
The inventor of
in
Wordle.
5th place.
Oh, my gosh.
Top 5.
Top 5.
Wow.
5.
Wow.
Out of
Well
how
done.
many?
Well done, Hugo. And in not
you.
that many
Thank you.
tries,
That's pretty
top
good.
5 on the leaderboard is very impressive.
Yeah.
This
We've
may
had
be a
people-
new skill I didn't know about.
Yeah. You never know. And this is just this like first 3 tries. You might go try this later and get
Add it to your resume.
4.2.
All right. That's good. I will take that.
If you're curious about some other times, the list is very extensive.
Who's top?
Tom Scott, 3.5 seconds.
Wow.
Tom Scott was very prepared, very competitive, broke out his own keyboard.
Here's the list.
And the list goes, I don't think there's any double digits on there. But
Wow, look at
there's-
Cleo, 4.3.
Yeah.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah.
And Quinn.
Yeah. So, people who type a lot, people who spend a lot of time around keyboards,
Yeah.
you might be surprised how fast you can type the alphabet. But that's it. That's where we end it. So thank you for your time and of course for all the insight. Well, we'd love to have you back. Obviously, we talk about stuff like this all the time, not just the current tech, but the history and the context of it. So this is super fun, and hopefully we get to do it again sometime.
It's a dream come true to be here. Thank you guys. Great work.
Appreciate it. So that's about it. That was really fun. Thanks again to Hugo for coming to the studio and for sharing the time, the expertise. So it's fun having conversations with people who are very knowledgeable about this stuff. And I feel like this is still very early. Like, as much as we've talked about VR for the past 10 years, like, this is rapidly developing. We didn't even touch spatial, what are they called? Spatial personas in this conversation, and like all the weird stuff that's been happening with hardware. Since that conversation, Brandon's Vision Pro has like cracked up the middle. All this stuff is going to be pretty constant, but I feel like this is a fun spot for this episode and this conversation because it was a good time. So thanks again. Leave any comments of any things that you learned maybe while listening to this episode. But
maybe Hugo will be in the comments.
Maybe he will. That would actually be pretty sick. But I think this is the part where we sign out.
Oh yeah, Waveform is produced. Actually, I think David did this already. Let's throw it to David.
Waveform is produced by Adam and Leon and Ellis Revin. We are associated with the Vox Media Podcast Network, and our intro music is by Vane Sill.
Close enough.
Pretty cool. We'll do it. We'll take it. We'll keep it.